and good morning. We are all part of the first LEGO League robotics team here at the middle school. Today we would like to show you what goes into having the #1 robot in the state of Kentucky and being regional champs.
Each year we strive to be the most well-rounded at competition. It's a lot to do in a limited amount of time, so we try to divide and conquer.
We make sure all of us know all the parts of the competition: robot mission, robot design, core values, and project. But at least one of us excels in a certain part.
So really quick, we'd like to introduce ourselves by explaining our expertise.
I'm Ella, I'm the team leader.
I'm Annabelle. I mostly focus on our scripts.
I'm Ava, and I do the programming.
I'm Kayla, and since I'm new to the team this year, I'm getting familiar with all 4 parts of competition.
I'm Travis, and I'm a builder. I'm Daniel, and I'm also a builder. As you can see, there's multiple skills that go into being able to compete in First LEGO League.
Robot performance has been our biggest strength this year. For the past 3 years, we've gotten first place at state.
Robot performance is when you autonomously make a robot go onto a board in 2 minutes and 30 seconds to complete multiple missions in a matter of seconds.
With our perfect run, we were able to get 490 points. The second place team achieved 325. So here's a quick look at our robot. It's been in the making for several years now. We've designed it to where we can easily add on and take off attachments.
As you can see, FIRST requires us to learn many new skills like engineering, programming, and presenting. Thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to learn about our robot. We would love to continue sharing our love of STEM.
If you have any questions?
So, as we discussed earlier, and not giving any of your secrets away, why have you been so successful? You were a multi-time state champion, so what are the ingredients that have made you a multi-time state champion?
Our main goal is to get lots of different people with a variety of skill sets so that each of us can achieve something at practice. We split up so that each of us, for each of our strengths, we can do the best we can for each practice. Daniel and Travis, they often lean more towards building the robot and building attachments. Annabelle and Kayla work on presentation scripts. Ava programs the robot, and I kind of work it all together at the very end to make sure we all are getting the most in that we possibly can. It's a lot to do in a limited amount of time, so we try to manage it to where we're working on robot first, because we can get that done real quick, and we can improve on that easily, and then we memorize our scripts throughout each practice and throughout each day. We're required with doing certain homework each day, so just putting forth a lot of effort, being motivated, working hard, and getting it all done together.
I think also is that this is not your first version.
Right.
Correct?
Yes.
This has been in the making for a long time, and we've improved on it each year.
We actually started off with EV3 brick you see here. There's no pieces. We have to come up with a design like this. We decided to make it as compact as we possibly could and try to create everything inside the interior. We want it to be strong and efficient on the robot mission so we can get as many points as possible.
So what version of this did you say you're on? Is this the 4th version?
Yeah, about the 4th version.
So it's much better than your first version.
Yes, much better.
Which is a learning point for people to do this. What other life skills do you think you've learned by going through this process?
I've learned about how to program, because I didn't really know much going into it, and then all of them taught me, and her brother taught me, and I learned all of it really fast, and now I can do it without having a lot of issues.
Obviously, this expands our horizon for different engineering careers, different things like that, but then we're also learning how to present to people and getting more comfortable speaking in front of audiences, which I value the most. So working as a team, speaking with each other, memorizing stuff like this, and just being able to put our best foot forward.
Or teamwork. Yeah, we all work together so well. So.
Yeah. And I don't underestimate the importance of talking in front of others. That's very few people can do that. And definitely when I was your age, I wasn't able to do what you're just doing. So that gives you a pretty big leg up, especially if you combine that with some technical skills. And you guys work not just during the week, you work weekends too, right?
Right.
To get better at this.
We spend our Sunday working on as much as we can so that we can get a lot done at state.
So you're not winning by luck.
Right. It's a lot of hard work.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
We test our robot 13 out of 15 times. It's got to work, or we got to change something.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome to Spencer County Middle School. I'm David Couch with the Kentucky Department of Education. Thanks for joining us this morning for our monthly get-together with all the state K through 12 CIOs and education technology leaders. Sent the agenda to you yesterday and then followed that up with the Go Soapbox questions and discussion questions. Those are open now, and so we'll have someone throughout the webcast take a look at those and getting the results of your input. So go ahead and take a look at those now and get on to Go Soapbox. Once again, thanks for joining us this morning. I'm joined here live, and I'll let the district introduce themselves here in just a moment, with Marty Park, Mike Lenningham, and Phil Coleman. And then Charlotte Chowning is in the audience with some of the folks also from districts around here, which we appreciate those folks joining us, along with some of our staff from KD is also here. I guess has family in the area. And we also have folks in our audience that'll be joining us. Lisa Moore, Dee Connor, Chuck Austin, and Bob Hackworth are in Frankfort, and we'll be bringing them in at various parts during our discussion. So once again, thanks for joining us. But thanks to our host district, Superintendent Adams, with your team. I guess when I took a look at it, last webcast, we were in Frankfort Independent Schools. We recognized the portions of our staff, the people on our staff that had been with us 10 or more years. And we have a good number of those. And so the wisdom and the experience that comes with this, you're always trying to get some new talent in. I know working those in, but this is a team that you have in here, including yourself, that is pretty experienced and been around Spencer County for a while.
Absolutely. This is my 13th year in the district, and as of, I guess, July 1st, 2020, I will be the second longest serving tenured superintendent in the state. But when you referred to wisdom in regards to technology, that is to my right. That would be Chuck Abel, my assistant superintendent, and Eric Cecil, our district technology coordinator.
And they've been here for quite a while, too, right?
They have, yes, they have actually been here longer than I. So the consistency in leadership has certainly proved to be one of our components of success.
Yeah. And you know, for the folks, and we always like to have the superintendent give an opening to folks that are not familiar with Spencer County. I'm somewhat familiar with it because my son played football. We came to Spencer County and played. And you also have a connection with my brother. You played in an all-star game, basketball all-star game with my brother Joey. So we got that. It was fun catching up with you with your background with my brother.
Absolutely. The conversation that we had earlier with Joey that gave me an opportunity to reminisce back days, years and years ago. But Spencer County is a rural district located about 30 minutes southeast of Louisville. We're currently sitting here in the middle school, which was a national school to watch in 2018. Our philosophy in Spencer County has and always will be about relationships. We feel that the vested relationships and the professionals that we have within the district aim to provide a culture and environment conducive to student success. We've actually transitioned from one of the poorest performing school districts in the state 13 years ago to one of the highest. We have broken the top 10% in the state in ACT, low socioeconomic subgroups, ECE subgroups. We're currently trailing only Oldham County in academic prominence as the K-12 district in the OVEC region. As I said earlier, we've got a very supportive Board of Education who understands the significance of resources, but accountability with those resources. They have looked at initiatives such as full-day preschool. We build a calendar around the fact that we can go only 2.5 weeks during a 365-day school year where our at-risk population is without direct instruction. The initiatives with technology, as you'll hear a little bit later, have been lengthy. I look at initiatives such as the flipped classroom I was explaining earlier, and it never ceases to amaze me how our kids are captivated by technology and how they learn difficult components and concepts such as mathematical terms through computer. But it's a different approach, and it is a layer to what we do to find success. Our teachers throughout the district are amazing. They understand the need to get out of their comfort zone from time to time. They are very hardworking. Our support staff, bus drivers, cafeteria maintenance, they also understand the philosophy of relationships. Many of our bus drivers understand that they are the first adult associated with the district that our kids see each morning and the last they see. So it is a team effort that has certainly catapulted us to one of the elite districts in the state. Other initiatives, we firmly believe in supporting our new teachers, our new teacher cadres, our second-year sophomore cadres, being able to support them throughout their learning in their early years. As I stated, the board has continued to be supportive and provide resources and allow us to expand learning initiatives, and we're currently in the middle of standards-based work. So we've got something new going on about every day, but we do not let that overshadow the fact that if you care about your kids, you put the time in, they understand how much they are loved, how much they are cared for, and they do in fact perform very well for us.
I got to see some of your state champion students. I think they're called the New Kids on the Block. The robotics team, there's a multi-time state champion. And we filmed that, and we're going to show that when we put out the webcast, the copy of the webcast. But just so impressed with those students, and the part is how you become a state champion without giving all your secrets away. But the thing you learn from is just the hard work, but also the iterations of making their product great, because it wasn't just their first time. They work at it hard to make it even better, and that's just definitely a life skill that you see.
Oh, absolutely. One of the initiatives that we were talking about in regards to the Board of Education was to host enrichment camps during the summer while our at-risk students are busy retaining fundamental information. And STEM is one of the enrichment camps that we host each summer. Again, the interest in STEM is something that we are trying to circle the wagons around, if you will, to provide what they need at an early age and to provide them possible work-ready skills as they enter high school. It's difficult sometimes because I know that many of our kids know much more than I as it relates to some of this, but to keep up with the information and to provide that information to them as an opportunity has really given most of our kids at the high school an identity in knowing that we want to provide avenues for their future and continued success.
So, we have another Chuck with us, and Eric. And Chuck, how long you been with
I've been with Spencer County School District for 15 years now.
And then Eric, 20 years. And so, as we spoke earlier, is you lead the district, but also you count on these two to help lead the implementation, maximization of the technology. So, I don't know if you guys want to say, so we're going to be talking to you throughout the webcast. Just some opening comments.
Well, I think we're really proud in Spencer County with the progress that we've made with technology. I don't know that was always the case several years ago, but again, Mr. Adams talked about our Board of Education, how they've been committed to continuous improvement. In Spencer County, we believe that all students deserve a personalized learning approach, and technology is just one way to go about providing that to our kids, whether it be through flipped classrooms, whether it be through the Summit platform, Google Classrooms, and so forth. And we're just really excited about the progress that we've made the past several years and looking forward to continuing in the future.
Yeah, the only thing I have to add to that is that from the technical end of it, we've tried to make it all the different platforms available to the teachers throughout the district. We're not one of those districts that says you're going to go just Google or just Office 365. We allow for those access points. So, yeah.
We've given our teachers in our schools the opportunity to have the autonomy to make some of that decision making on their own. And we're fortunate that we have great leaders in all of our districts, great teacher leaders, great school leaders, and they've really prioritized technology. Our school board sets aside Section 7 monies each and every year to be utilized for the needs of the schools, and our schools have typically chosen to continue to upgrade and to improve their technology as part of that avenue. So.
And you have some financial incentives for teachers to get certification.
We do. We've utilized some Title II funds in the past to provide small stipends for teachers who become Google certified and so forth. And that's a nice little incentive, but it's the personal goals that the teachers have themselves that are truly the motivation. That's just a little icing on the cake, basically.
The other thing that stood out to me is taking a look at it is the growth in population of students you have in this district is pretty amazing in a short period of time.
Yes, it was 2,215 or 20 when I arrived 13 years ago, and we are now at 3,000. Yeah. So the growth has been, it's kept us busy, but it's also provided an opportunity to do some things that normally we would not have the ability, the funds, the resources to do.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to turn some of the statewide types of things and bring you all throughout the webcast. And I know you have I just want your state representative here, which I appreciate you joining us. I know you had to hustle back to Frankfort, but thank you for joining us this morning. And you can feel free to jump in and come up here anytime you want to. So I'm going to be giving a little bit of a legislative update. So appreciate you coming. The first item we have up, and I know Chuck Austin, I think Chuck's there, is to talk about, we have the upcoming Kentucky K-12 CIO Summit at Kisti. And just as a FYI, we're the only state in the nation that does that. And there's a lot of things that we do in K-12, and I always want to brag on it that we're perfect. That makes a lot of sense. And that is one of them. That is our way to get feedback. And we pick 3 or 4 topics, and the goal is to get feedback from you all. And I think you've seen through the course of the year, not only get the feedback, we act upon that, which I think is an important component of that. And so in that case, every year we ask for you, what are the top topics that you want to make sure that we discuss in that upcoming conference here in March? So Marty and Chuck, I'll let you guys lead that discussion.
Well, thank you. And Andy, if you can show the promo slide, we want to make sure to do a great job, and our field staff are doing a great job of making sure that we can get as many of our EdTech leaders and CIOs all together in one place as we can. And over the past several years, it's just been an awesome time for us to learn from each other. This is an event for us that, you know, we don't spend a ton of time talking. We spend all of our time listening. And as David said, we really act. Every year we take an inventory of what we hear, and we act on that. And so
the teaching point there is when you give us ideas for what you want covered, this is not a update.
Yeah.
Typically, we open it up and we speak for 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes max, and we open up the topic, and then we listen for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. So as you're thinking of topics, these are strategic, and what is it we really want to have good district feedback from to consider, you know, every level of every district as we move forward.
I think we've said this every year, David, but last year was our best CIO Summit that we've had, and so we're really following that same model again this year. It'll be in the same room. It'll start at 11:15 to 1:45 in the Archibald room this year on Wednesday as Kisti gets started. And Chuck, if you'd like to jump in and share as well.
I'm sorry, Marty, did you throw that to me?
I did.
Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and everybody out in Webcast land coming to you from HQ in Frankfort. But just to really cap off what David and Marty have both shared today, we talk a lot about the strength of our education technology program statewide, and I think we can all agree that it's taken a community or village when you look back at the milestones and our accomplishments over the years. And really the key to that, to be honest with you, has been the relationships we've established and nurtured. And obviously the key to relationship is communication, and the summit just represents one more opportunity to communicate and bring people together to share ideas. And really, as you guys have already touched upon, the summit is really designed to throw some really challenging concepts out there that our program is faced with, and really get everybody's input on how we can kind of refocus and repoint our compass to make some changes programmatically. So we take this very seriously. We value the opportunity to watch our EdTech leaders get together and share with each other, as well as to share with us. And as David mentioned before, it's the only forum that I'm aware of where nationally, where every EdTech leader in the state is gathered at one time in one place, all right, to come together and collaborate on some really cool ideas. So, that being said, our summit's going to kick off this year on Wednesday, March 11th at the Kisti Conference. It's going to be basically the exact same format, same location as we've talked about in the past. Big kudos out to the Kisti board and Kisti leadership for continuing to host this event and sponsor this event for us. Right. Your field staff will be opening up the registration link later today and later this week, so that folks can go ahead and jump in. And as David mentioned, we've already gathered some degree of feedback on topics, but we've got to go soapbox question out there today. And we really like your input additionally on some things that we can discuss together. Once again, not informational, because we can do that at our regional meetings. We can do that on our webcast. Really looking for things that you guys can put your heads together on. We can put our heads together with you and come up with some really good direction on some really challenging issues. So Marty, David, I'm gonna throw it back to you guys unless you've got anything else.
So, you know, our districts are aware of this, is, you know, at the end of every year, we ask all the districts what we did well, what we didn't do well, and what should our goals be for the following year. And up at the top of that board consistently was the CIO Summit.
As what we did well.
Is what we did well, and we need to continue doing. And it's because if you've never been to that, you will find that we purposely put you at tables that probably you interact with districts you've never interacted with before. It is intentional. Is while you meet probably as a region, we want you to meet and interact with folks from different parts of the state. And we also are very intentional of having very large districts with very small districts, and just a variety of them all in the mixture. So as you're sitting at that table, you develop a relationship with someone you probably haven't before, which is a good thing. I always think that's a good thing. And you see the commonality despite where you're located at a lot of the things that you have, but you also see some of the differences and become more empathetic about that. So there's a plus and minus of that. So anyone that's gone to those realizes the big added value that they bring, but a big part of that too is having the right topics. So I'll give you examples. When we get that feedback from all the districts, we identify, and I did this from the Frankfort Independent Webcast last week, I identified the top things that we did well in 2019. I went through the list and discussing the things that didn't go well, which should be our goals for 2020, and those are in the summary notes that I sent you yesterday. Those are really good points for us to go to and take a look at. So for example, a good number of you talked about interoperability between systems in the light of cybersecurity. So as, for example, you know, you have a person that leaves your district, you have one place that you put it in, and it takes it away from the other systems they have access to. So for example, it goes in Munis, it goes in Infant Campus, it goes in the 30 other instructional systems you may have in the district, and it removes that person. And why is that so important? Because cyber criminals look for stale accounts, and they look for people that have left to assume their identity for a period of time and go undetected for long periods of time. And anything that has what I call our top secret data in it, and definitely Infinite Campus is one of those. Munis has that too. But there's a variety of others within a school district. We really want to make sure that no one's getting in there that shouldn't get in there, that doesn't have a true need to know. So that, to me, as I took a look at the discussion topics, is I think that's one I want feedback on. So this is a two-way thing, is how can we do that right across the state? As you all can recall, last year we spent a lot of time on cybersecurity and talking about password links and the changes. And you see we're in the progress now, in the process now, of addressing those. So these are things that we want your feedback on, not just because we're going to pontificate on them, because we're going to get ready to go forth with it. And it gives us, you know, the comfort of knowing that we have a high percentage of folks wanting it. Not that we're going to please 100%, because I don't think that's ever going to be possible with anything that we do. But we're getting a good feel for what a high percent want, but also trying to take in consideration the few that don't want it, why they don't, and trying to address those as well. So we do want you to give some thought to that. Obviously, we have some thoughts based upon what you've already told us, but this is really the last opportunity for you to give us that feedback, because we're going to, within the next week, start identifying those. So that we're not going to pontificate on this much longer. We'll start identifying, but we definitely want your feedback to it. Anything else you want to be said about it?
Well, we've been very close, but we've not yet hit 100% of districts altogether in one. So that's a target for us this year.
Yeah. And we get, and Lisa Moore would know this, I don't know if we've gotten 80, I think last year was one of our highest percentages, 85, 90%. And you always have the situations where they signed up, but something happened at home and they couldn't come, some kind of emergency. But you get 90%, that's pretty good. But obviously you want the other 10%. And for the folks that have never been there, I really encourage you. It is a really good experience. We go out of our way to make sure it's a good experience. But it's a good way to kick off the KISTI event. And the KISTI event is awesome from a variety of perspectives. So it's always been a neat thing to have that to be the kickoff, to kind of bring everybody together in somewhat of a team huddle, and then have them kick off with the KISTI event. So appreciate, you know, you're attending that this year, but also your feedback going forward. Any topic area you want to make sure we hit upon?
I've been to it every year since you started it. I mean, I agree with you totally. It's nice to sit among your colleagues and get a different, even sometimes different perspective from their size, or even maybe, you know, similar to yours, and get meet new people. Yeah, it's great.
It's a good thing. And actually, I would like to say we thought of it, but this came up when Commissioner Holliday was our commissioner. He did it with superintendents. And when I saw that the first time, I said, that is an outstanding idea. And so we copied it, but I don't know why the other states don't do it. No other state does a webcast with their districts, which I don't understand. They don't have field staff get out with them. So I do think one of the advantages we have to the other 49 states is the relationships that we have with districts. And not that it's 100% perfect, but when I talk to my peers, they feel we are the best in the country at doing that, and because we work hard at it. And so the relationships, as we know, is the key to getting anything done. And so we work hard at it. This is a key part of our relationship building. Next item I just want to briefly talk to you about, as most of you know, is I'm the last remaining leader that came with CARA, the Kentucky Education Reform Act. As a part of the original leadership team, I am truly the gray beard of that team. And I came because of its desire to believe, much like what you were talking about a little bit earlier, all children can learn at high levels. Let's give them a good run and go at life and the passion, and there was a technology component of that. So this is the 30th anniversary of CARA and the technology component, which is interesting for me, so is when superintendents were asked in the first couple years of CARA, what is the least likely program to survive after 5 or 10 or 15 years? KETS was the one they chose. We're still here. And we're still here doing strong. So the reason I mention that in this context is I would like to, we did this, I don't know if it was 5 or 10 years ago at KISTE, is we had a session to where we kind of gave a history of the KETS program. You know, we put out the timeline from 1992 to 2019. As you can see, we're the pioneer and national leader in most aspects of education technology. Most Kentuckians are totally unaware of that. But it's a neat thing to do. And not that we're perfect, and we're always trying to obviously get better with that. But that wasn't just luck. Just like when I talked to your robotics team, the reason they're a 2 or 3 time state champion is not luck. There's a lot that goes into becoming a national leader or a state champion. And we would like to share those with folks. So this is just not a going back in time, but it's also sharing words of wisdom of what has made it successful over the course of time. So those that are new to their positions, can learn from that, because the things that have been successful for the past 30 years, not that they will apply for the next 30, but there's a lot of basic concepts that can apply no matter what you do, whether it be technology or non-technology. And the difference between the one we had 5 or 10 years ago, we actually have the artifacts, is when we moved from the Capitol Plaza Tower to the Sauer Building, it forced me and others to go through all these boxes that we had, much like when you're forced to move for the first time, you're going through boxes and going, oh, I forgot I had that. But it's the original stuff that we did in almost every aspect over the past 30 years. The original master plan, the original concepts that went behind everything we did. And so for those interested from a historical perspective, it's pretty interesting stuff that we can bring for the first time. So it's kind of like the Smithsonian. We'll bring out some stuff, and you have to put on gloves, and just kidding about that. But it'll give you a chance to see some of the original stuff and how it served us well for 25 or 30 years. It's kind of like the U.S. Constitution. As you see it, if you ever gone to Philadelphia and seen that in its original form, but you realize how well that has served us for so long. And there's a lot of these original concepts that they don't age, they go well. But there's other parts that we have learned. And you know, you'll hear me talk about, we did email and became the first state to have email to every district. We had superintendents telling their staffs not to send email. Not because they were against email, but because they thought they were charged a 25-cent postage every time they sent. So it was just those kind of things of don't underestimate the people side, and no matter what. So we had to go, we had to, you know, we had some of the travel the state that educated every, you know, superintendent, so they got more comfortable with that and move forward. So it's kind of lessons learned of as you go down this path. So what I'd be interested from the districts, and we're going to try to bring back some of the folks that were part of it. I'm going to approach Don Kaufman, who was my predecessor, and even Joe Kirkman, who was his, to try to be there. But other folks that you know that have been through the years, they would appreciate that. I always find that, you know, folks coming back, you know, are appreciative of your including them and the team huddle, but I also think the folks that are here now can learn from it. So that's just a concept. We don't have to do it. It's not a formalized thing. You don't have to wear a tux or anything. It's just an after-hours thing.
But you can if you want.
You can if you want. But it's just an after-hours thing, just to sit down and have a discussion. So let me know if you're interested or not interested in pursuing that. Next item up is a legislative update. A legislative session has started in January. Of course, it starts way before then in the preparation phase of it, but I'm just going to talk about things that affect Kentucky K-12 education technology. So I guess I would open it up with, and I think the last time we spoke is before the budget address that happened toward the end of the month, and so we know a little bit what's happening with the budget and a couple of pieces of legislation that have been proposed, and it's a long process. You know, it goes through different parts of the House, and then when the House approves it, goes to the Senate, and that can be vice versa. If the Senate starts it, and then it's got to be approved. But these are, I've been saying, concept phase versus execution phase, and so that. But we want to give you a heads up that that's moving forward. And Lisa Moore, do we have you back at our studio in Frankfort?
I seen a message a while ago where she wasn't able to be at the studio, so I'm not sure where she's at.
She's not there yet? Okay, so I'll move forward, and I'll talk about the pieces that I know. So first one up is the budget itself. I would say overall K-12 is appreciative of the initial budget proposal. I know it's gone through the governor's office. I think the House has got it now. Is just from 2008, I know from the Department of Education and the technology portion, we've gone through 17 different cuts since 2008. And it is nice not to have a cut so far in this one, because it's been very difficult for us for these great things that we've done, the pioneering, to sustain that with that many cuts over such a sustained period of time. So I know there was great emphasis on trying to make sure with K-12, making sure the budget was there. And there was even some increases that I can recall in the SEEK funding, a 1% increase to it. The textbook and instructional materials, and instructional materials can be spent on technology. And Marty, I know you had a comment of how much money has been spent on instructional materials.
Well, we've had a 13% growth year over year in digital content and curriculum, and I know you mentioned some targets that you're after from a personalized learning perspective, and so certainly instructional materials that have a digital flair to it, it fits into that, that bucket.
So these are things you as the, for the, I think there was $11 million in instructional materials, and then the 1% SEEK. Those aren't dedicated 100% for technology, so that would require folks in the technology position in the district going and making their case with the superintendent and CFO of that money going toward technology. The part that didn't go well for us in Kentucky K-12 EdTech is we had additional budget requests to do a couple things. One is to restore the cuts that have happened since 2008 to the technology funding. One is to get a cost of living increase, and we haven't had one since 1992, but also up to get some funding to address as we go forth with all the things we're going to talk about today, including online testing, bandwidth growth over the course of time, and that's happened since the early 90s when Kentucky became the first state to have all the schools connected to the internet. There's always been a gradual growth to make sure that we're prepared for that, but also the people side of education technology. As we see this explosion in technology being bought, to really make sure we have enough people there to make sure it's maximized in instruction, it's reliable, and it's cyber secure. And so those were the purposes of that, and it wasn't in the governor's office version, it wasn't in the House version yet, and so it goes to the Senate as well. And sometimes, to be honest with you, it takes a couple iterations. I would like it to be in this year's budget because it happens every 2 years, but this may be another time we go after it. They can't do everything to try to address it, and I know they're just trying to stabilize, which once again we appreciate. But I wanted you to know that was one of our wins of 2019, of making it through the process of making additional budget requests, having our state board listed as one of the top priorities. But once again, the current status of that's not been addressed so far. Let's talk about a couple pieces of legislation, and there's really three of them. And there's, once again, this is concept phase, and we have a legislator there that's my adult supervision right now, so you can tell me if I'm saying anything that's incorrect. But once again, I think what you see with any kind of legislation, the intention is always good. And I think the balance for legislators is trying to get a good understanding. Are there any unintended negative consequences as we're trying to go through and do this good thing? And so that's the part where the department gets consulted. And to be honest with you, we try to react as if we have 172 of you standing right behind us. This doesn't affect us directly, but we try to say, how does this play out in a school district, even while they're trying to do this really good thing? Is there a negative consequence in trying to do this good thing? And make sure the legislators are aware of that as much as they can be. And even they may go forth with it, but they're understanding this consequence may happen from it. So let's talk about one of them. Pretty simple one is just the interest in computer science. Yep. I think that's originating in the Senate. and just interest in computer science being broadly available to students across our state. And I don't know how that's measured or not measured, but definitely an emphasis on making sure that there's opportunities in computer science. And we know a lot of times, you know, Dr. Stone with you earlier, that's a people limitation, right? Is you see the importance of it, but do you have the people there that can lead that within your district? And I think that's a recognition of just getting there. And if you take a math teacher to do that, then you got a hole in the math teacher positions to do that. But definitely there's an interest in it, and I can speak firsthand. In the late 70s, I had a math teacher that saw the importance of computers and technology, and he introduced me to a Fortran class. Now, no one knows Fortran now, but I was introduced to it, and it sparked my interest in computer science. And a lot of times, you know, in the world of teaching and learning, it takes one teacher to do that for a student and makes a difference for their lifetime. And Mr. Ramey of Johnson Central High School was that for me. Changed the path of my life, and obviously I spent, you know, the course of my life involved with that. So I think that's part of it. We recognize the importance of computer science and making sure that our students are aware of that. So you're seeing legislation being proposed just to see, is that on the radar screen of districts? And I don't think there's any penalties, but it's they want to keep up with certain things of measuring how well they're doing or not well they're doing in certain areas, and just get a feedback on it. So once again, that's a concept phase versus execution. And people that know me go, I do concept, not execution. Concept, not execution. I do it 3 times. So they know this has not happened yet. This is a concept, but just make you aware of it. Second one, a piece of legislation, is one that modifies a piece of 1998 legislation around safety and security of students from sexually explicit information. So that was put in place, and we've been doing that since 1998. That was a state law, and then like a year later, there was a federal law for quiet called the Child Internet Protection Act. So we've been doing that for quite some time. There's a new piece added on that's being considered, and this is coming in the House. And it was proposed last session. I don't think it made it out of the House, or maybe even one of the committees there. But like a lot of legislation, there's multiple at-bats with it. I mean, just because it doesn't happen one year, you may see that, you know, 5 or 6 straight years in a row, just to get momentum for it, because the first year, not enough people are aware of it, and they have other things that take place. They get a year to educate folks on it, and it goes forward. So this one's about making sure that parents are aware that non-age appropriate content, whether it be in paper form, internet form, music form, the negative consequences they can have of students under 18. And so the part of the legislation asked for a study to be done by the Department of Education, but our response was there's been multiple studies done over the past 50 years on the topic, so we would probably just say, you know, use, you know, the research that's already been done on the topic, probably use another cabinet beyond the Department of Education to select the correct one, and the other component of it talks about the distribution. Instead of putting it in paper form, there's existing links on the internet with these studies, and just have them point there. So this would be something that's being proposed, like at the beginning of the school year, just making sure, whatever which way you inform parents, and I'm sure there's a variety of ways, just making sure the parents are, you know, aware of that. The non-age appropriate thing is not a good thing for kids to be reading or seeing or whatever they're doing with it at, you know, at certain younger ages, and so that's the proposal of it. The last one is around, once again, this is trying to do a good thing, and the analogy I would give with this, when it's coming, I saw the buses coming and going here, and I know at the end of a school day, you know, one of the most hectic times is making sure the child gets on the right bus. And then parents coming or someone coming midday to make sure that they really have the authority to pick them up, and if they do come, do they have everything they're supposed to have before they leave the school? Because it's really tough to reconnect them with that. And I know as a grandparent, when I came to my grandson's school, is even though my daughter had told them ahead of time I was coming, is the school took the extra step to really want to make sure I was that grandparent and I was matched up with the right son. And you want to do that because the consequences are enormous of making that kind of mistake. And you want to have as much information with them when they go. So, you know, just like the end of a school day, you want to make sure the child has a chance to pick up all their stuff before they leave. And even if you're picking them up early, which I've done with my kids over the years, they get a chance to kind of pick stuff up versus later on trying to reconnect stuff with them, like a fire drill, just stopping and leaving stuff where it is and trying to reconnect that. So there's a piece of legislation that is really wanting, and I think everyone would be for this, you know, as a child leaves from one district to another one, to make sure that happens as quickly as possible. Regardless of what kind of, you know, the situation of the printing with the child, you want to make sure there's a sense of urgency with that. But at the same time, you really want to make sure it's as complete as it can be when it goes forward, and you get the right child going to the right school. And so it's the same thing with the data part of it. So as we take a look at the Infinite Campus part of it, and you guys deal with, you know, student transfers coming in and out, close to 99% of that, actually over 99%, as we see transfers between different school districts, that happens very quickly, and usually on the same day. It's rare that it goes over one, very rare it goes over two, and there may be certain circumstances, just like when I was the grandparent showing up, they spent extra time with me to make sure I was the right guy. Now the next day I went and picked them up, it was a lot less, because they made that connection, besides my grandson running to me, which was a pretty good sign, was they really made sure I was the right one, because, you know, everyone knows a child getting on the wrong bus, it's devastating. Or allowing someone to pick them up that shouldn't pick them up is pretty devastating. Or even making that, you know, that mistake if there's a shot clock or compression. And a real life example that happened to us, we were having a staff meeting. I call it the OET team huddle. And one of our staff members, Infinite Campus allows you to get instant notification if your child's been signed out, which is great, especially as they get older and they can drive. First of all, it's a safety thing, but also, why aren't they at school yet? Make sure they're there. But he had just dropped off, I think, his third grader. I would say he's in third grade, you know, a couple hours before, and then he got this notification his child's been checked out. You know, he sends this message to his wife. She says, I didn't check him out. And I'll never forget that panicked look on his face as he's leaving, and those that are around, leaving, and said, my son's been checked out, and neither one of us did it, and him leaving that. And we've all felt that as a parent of this thing's not gone right. So what turns out, his child had a similar name of another student in the school that was in the 5th grade. And the clerk, once again meaning good intentions, had identified the wrong child signing out. Now, of course, he was relieved as a parent that the wrong child his child had not been taken, but also was upset that they had picked the wrong one because the angst and the panic that caused. And you all can relate to that in the school buses. And so the piece of legislation that we gave feedback on is we really make sure, we want to make sure students go to the next school as fast as they can. But we want to also make sure the data is as complete as they can be in Infinite Campus, because you don't get multiple attempts at that, that's one. Because you would have data corruption and multiple students corrected if you went back the next day and the next day. So really making sure the time frame is adequate for the school to really make sure all the students, you know, information is right, but make sure it's the right student going to the right school, because you do not want to send, you know, information about a student that's not the right student going to the right school. So that's a process that we're under with that, with Infinite Campus, that piece of legislation. Once again, the intentions of it are all good. We just want to make sure that school districts are given reasonable time and understanding of the transfer between the different students that are there. So, you know, those three that I mentioned here, any kind of comments from you all?
Well, the Infinite Campus, it's turned into something that we rely heavily on, but I certainly concur with that, the analogy of the child being checked out. We've all gone through phases, be it checkout, be it on the bus, where similar names and mistaken identities, and any upgrades that we look at we have found very useful and supportive of our mission of keeping our kids safe.
And I think you can relate to this too. Even though it works 99.9% of the time, if it happens to you, it really doesn't matter.
Right.
And you all dealt with that. What you're trying to make sure is something's not done that jeopardizes the other 99% to try to address this situation and make sure a good balance of it. So I think the right thing is trying to be done is trying to get as fast as possible, make sure districts, as they're transferring between districts, that's done as quickly as possible, but also making sure people are, you know, have the right information as they go. Because with, like I say, at the Infinite Campus, there's not another pull that happens. That's one time, and there's a lot of good security reasons for that. Anything that would be sent after that would have to be sent in paper form or, you know, by email, hoping to attach it later on. So that would be one of the negative consequences of doing it later or doing it too fast. But also, we want to make sure we don't do it so soon. Like, for example, someone says at 3 p.m. I'm switching schools, and by 4 p.m. having to have it go. So that's the part that we're kind of going back on, is the right timing of that. So I think everyone would be for trying to make that happen as quickly as possible. Mike, any the updates on E-rate for our audience?
Oh, I didn't know we was going to E-rate.
Yep.
So we've got the E-rate filing window that will close March the 25th, I think is the date. I got to find my notes here. And so folks got to be aware of that. And then if you've got to file a 470 form in order to advertise something that you're going to be looking to procure during the upcoming E-rate funding year, you'll need to have that 470 posted no later than February 24th. So you've got a few more days to do that. I do want to make folks, remind folks that is something that's affected by or impacts E-rate is that we have our current network contract that expires February 28th of 2021. And as of right now, it looks like there will be a gap between February 28th of 2021 to the end of that fiscal year, till the end of June, with a non-E-rate eligible network contract, because I don't know of any way that we're going to have a new network. Well, I know we're not going to have a new contract in place during this application period that would have a new network contract to be able to be eligible. So we're going to continue conversations with through our KE team with districts on that, as far as how they navigate that time and are prepared to handle that. And if there are any options for us to be able to avoid that gap, we're looking at any options for us to avoid that gap, such as a state master replacement contract avenue that we might be able to take to be able to avoid that gap in time there. So I want to make sure that folks are aware of that. Outside of that, I don't think there's really anything specific to E-rate.
Yep, thank you. Marty, I know before the state board in April, June, and August, we'll be bringing an updated student technology standards and I guess the library standards. So you can give you a brief update on where we're doing
Absolutely.
with that.
When you wrap your arms around something, you want to leave it better than when you first took hold of it. And that's definitely the case with these, David. A huge shout out to Laura Raganos on our team, who has led the work for Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology, pulling over 30 teachers and leaders together from both K-12 and higher ed, and put a tremendous amount of effort into what we will be taking to our Kentucky Board of Ed in April for the first reading of our brand new Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology. So we're extremely excited about that. And I know Andy and Megan, if you can put the URL, this is the first launch of open access to this first draft. It's bit.ly/KAS for tech, and that's Kentucky Academic Standards for Technology. So hopefully you can pull that document up and you can start to work through what our brand new technology standards look like. A couple points, and I'll be brief, but a couple points are that these standards are absolutely connected to our minimum graduation requirements. So for a while now, we've said that we want our students to demonstrate competencies in technology. Well, these competencies are defined in these academic standards, and so that's awesome for us. Included in the draft, you'll see a guidance section on what demonstrated looks like, and so that's a brand new swing for us that we're excited about as well. So these are required academic standards. We do differentiate technology standards from last year's approved and adopted computer science standards. There's certainly some touch points. Computer science standards are understanding and making technologies, whereas these are using technologies to transform learning. And so that's the target. David, we've definitely leveraged, just like some other states, we've definitely leveraged the ISTE standards as a framework, but our Kentucky leaders came together and so now we're referring to them as ISTE Plus. And so we have identified skills, but then we have also identified the application of those skills. And so that's a big deal for us. So first reading is in April. We're excited about that. And then the second reading for these standards will be in June.
Which is pretty good timing for our April, because our state board members, for the very first time, are going to have their state board meeting at our STLP State Championship, our Student Technology Leadership State Championship at Rupp Arena. And so they're going to get to see firsthand project-based learning. All the students do these awesome things in technology, and then they'll see the technology standards, which should play out pretty well. We couldn't have given you a better lead-in to make that case. Just a reminder for folks that that the technology standards have been around for a while. This is updated.
This is modernized.
We've modernized it. If you go back, there's a piece of law I can't remember which year it was put in, 2006 or 7.
Started in 2006.
Okay, and so it said by the class of 2012, and the reason I know that, my son was in the class of 2012, my oldest son, will be able to demonstrate or be able to prove that they have these, the technology, they've met the technology skills. So I always say this there is no technology test. So I always want to put that out there, and Marty knows to tell the board right away, there's not a separate test that districts give. And I know certain districts do measure this, but there's no thou shalt, you have to measure, you have a test that takes this. And plus, I don't know if we'd want it in isolation. We'd want them to show how to use technology in math, how to use it in science, how to use it in English. But it's more of, you observe it, and some evidence of it happening. So Chuck, I was talking about you earlier, is how has that played out with the standards before, and how would that play out going forward?
Well, we're fortunate in our district here that our board chooses to fund technology teachers at each of our schools, so we have someone who's somewhat accountable to teaching the standards. I think some of the greatest challenges that schools probably face moving forward with these standards and others is when does it get taught, who's responsible for that, and so forth. But I am excited to hear that in these standards you have specific competencies that have been identified.
That's right.
Because each and every year we have to assure that our graduates are competent in technology, but it's always been extremely vague for what that truly looks like. So I think now having this document that gives us guidance could potentially help us embed these into like our graduate profiles and some of those other competencies and dispositions that we've already developed, and try to mirror those or marry those two together so that we actually have a product that truly demonstrates competency in these skills.
That's extremely well said. And that's a perfect example of demonstration. So a student defending their graduate profile, right? That's a great demonstration of using technologies to transform learning, and by having David mentioned, project-based approach, and to have a product, where students have made something using technology. And so, we used to look at our technology standards as learning how to use technology. That was years ago, and so hopefully we're modernizing into where we're transforming learning using technology. The last thing I would like to mention, David, is our Kentucky Academic Standards for Library Media. And so we're moving forward with that work. James Allen is leading that on our team as a statewide leader for us. And our target right now is our first reading will be in June. With our Kentucky Board of Education, and our second reading will be in August.
So is this the first time they've ever been done, or is this an update?
This is the first time. So this is more in line, our Kentucky Academic Standards for Library Media are more in line with our computer science standards, where it's the first time we've done this, but also they're elective standards as opposed to our technology standards, which are required standards. And so from there, from our Board of Ed, once we have our first and second reading for both of those, they'll go through the full legislative process.
Okay, good. Thank you, Marty.
Yep.
And if someone wants to see these, how do they see them?
So Andy and Megan are flashing up the real short URL. It's a super short URL, bit.ly/KAS for tech. And this is day one of this public view. They have gone through public comment first, but that was a super draft version. And this is the version that will go in front of our Board of Ed.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to switch it back to Frankfort. Our Chief Data Officer, Dee Dee Connor, is going to give us an update on school report card, the data privacy and security, a new video that's out there that we'd like people to see, along with some training opportunities. Is there anything else Dee Dee wants to cover? Thank you, Dee Dee.
Good morning. Just a few things about today. I'll be pretty quick. We do have a couple of soapbox questions. Number 4, which is the report card, sharing the information with parents. And we've got some good feedback on that. Looks like a number of you are complete. You've actually shared the information with parents as well as the district. Some of you have done parents, but not with, I said district, but with the public through the school report card district. URL would be put into the newspaper with the highest circulation. Now, if the news media already did that for you, you're covered, because it doesn't have to be something that you do individually. But if it's not been done, that's still an item that needs to be done to be in compliance with some of the ESSA requirements and techie administrative regulations.
So let me ask you, can you bring that is question 4 up so we can let the audience see it that may not be seeing the results of that we've had so far? So just a second, Dee Dee, he's going to bring that up. Marty's given this.
While you're bringing that up, is one thing I'll mention is that from the CIO perspective, you definitely, whether you're involved in the communicating that out to parents and the students or not, you can definitely help with the requirement to get that on the school's web pages as well as the district web pages. And there's the capability to link directly to the school or district URL, so you don't have to start with the state site and have parents drill down. You can drill into directly to your school's or district site and have that link on your website. I know the Department of Education is doing an audit and is an ESSA requirement that you disseminate the school report cards. So they're looking at school sites, maybe district sites too, to see that they are in compliance. So if you've not already done that, the ones I've looked at have looked pretty good, but obviously I've not looked at every school. So you can help with monitoring that within your own districts. Make sure those links are attached on your web pages or findable within your websites.
How do you all feel about yours?
I feel confident. I mean, we've communicated to our schools and that this is a requirement. So, you know, if they're not there now, they will be by tomorrow.
Thanks. Go ahead, Dee Dee.
The one new thing is the school report card summary, and we had another question that went out, and it's new. It was introduced in January. It really is it's just 2 pages, and you get to it from the same site at school level only. It's for your traditional schools, what we call A1 schools only. But those schools have got a summary that can be shared with boards, with site-based decision-making groups, with community members, and it really just gives you a snapshot. It encourages folks to go to the school report card for more information, but we hope to find those to be very useful within the communities, and we're open to suggestions for those on going forward. That was really the first intent of doing these through the new school report card, so really would like to gather some feedback on those, on what is working well, what maybe more is needed in that.
So are you familiar with this? You all familiar with this? Yeah.
And that's under the discussion questions, Dee Dee, and it looks like we've had a few responses and
including one sitting in our audience. Yeah, thank you.
All right, so just David mentioned the data security videos. The data privacy forum group, Future Privacy Forum group, has put out some new videos. It's a struggle for all of us to get privacy worked into our curriculum and staff meetings and things like this. So what we do is we try to share items for you to use within your own meetings, things like that. So just wanted to make you aware of these new resources. We also have a pages and are including a lot of these type of videos in a parent page and school and district page too, to help you with finding the resources you need. The only other thing I had were some upcoming trainings. The user group, the Infinite Campus user group trainings, they are scheduled for March. They'll be in Eastern Kentucky and Western Kentucky. The sites are in the agenda that David sent out. Do try to encourage folks that use Infinite Campus to attend. Lisa Roten sends information out regarding the agenda. It's also on our website. So it is an opportunity to really collaborate with your peers as well as get information firsthand from Infinite Campus. And they are also there. They've got trainers there that if you've got questions, it's a really good opportunity to be able to get feedback and be able to work through maybe some issues you might have. So that's all I really had. We've got some end of year training dates, which won't be until April the 23rd, but if you can block that on your calendar, that's great. And then if you've got somebody that needs more in-depth Infinite Campus training, new staff, things like that, we do have some April training that is coming up that if we can get enough people to sign up for, that will be held in Fayette County. So that's all I've got, David,
Thank you.
unless there's any questions.
No, thank you, Dee Dee. I do want to make a plug for this privacy and security. And you've heard me say this before. We want to avoid situations, the only time people are interested in this is when it goes bad. So this is preventative. We spend a lot of time on security and privacy. Within our organization, really that split, Dee Dee Connor does it and Bob Hackworth, you're seeing organizations having chief privacy officers because it's such a big deal. I think within your district, someone needs to be identified as having that role and being championed. Because if you don't, this plays second fiddle until something goes bad and then everyone's trying to cram it in. And these are preventive. These are well done. We just don't create stuff as part of education. We find someone else has done that well. Somebody else has done that well. This organization specializes on this. They send it across the country. It's a really added value. So I give that plug, but I'd also ask that you approach your leadership in your district that says, who has the lead on privacy, at least championing it? And because you're going to need that before it goes bad. But it's a fairly new thing. This is not a position or a role that's been around for a long time, but given all the interest of maintaining and the importance of maintaining folks' privacy, it's an important one. So I encourage you to take a look at that. Mike, annually that we have superintendents, like Superintendent Adams here, that has to sign assurances. And we have some that are technology related, but we have some new ones that have been added.
Well, we've made some edits to the ones that we have. Okay. Is essentially what we've done. So really what we want to make folks aware of is that we're in the process right now at the department. All offices, all program areas are updating the funding assurance, the district funding assurances. So we have 10 that are identified that are specifically tied to technology related. And so we've been looking at those, making some edits and adjustments. And what our intention is to share that out. We'll first send that out with the notes from this, or just send it directly out through our KEs following this, and allow you guys to see what our edits are. We've changed so that we can get feedback if any of those don't make sense, or you want to make a suggestion, so that we can get those submitted to again the overall edits and changes, updates that'll be made for the department. Those typically go out in July. The commissioner usually sends those out in a like a weekly newsletter that goes out to the superintendents, advising of the new assurances, and so these 10 for technology specifically will be included in that. So I'm not going to try to walk through them right now. The edits we've made are pretty, they're really just to make them more meaningful and to, what'd you say, Martin?
I said cleaning them up.
Yeah, and make sure that they don't have things in them that are misleading, and make ties to some of our new approaches to some of the things that we're doing in the master plan and so forth, as far as digital readiness and so forth. So look for that. Provide feedback through your KEs to us so that we can ensure that those, again, are most useful, make sense, and are beneficial to us all. So
thank you.
That's really all I need to say about it.
Next topic is online testing. So why is online testing important? So from a student's perspective and a teacher's, they like the feedback as quickly as possible. And like most of you know, my daughter's a teacher, my 2 son-in-laws are teachers, my oldest son's a teacher, and so they want to know quickly as possible, did the concept they taught, did 90% of their class get it, did 95%, which ones didn't, do I need to cover that concept again? And that's one of the plus sides of online testing. And there's 3 flavors of online testing. And I'm not telling the folks at the table here anything new, but there's one to where you do it pretty frequently during the week. You may have daily tests. And you get that feedback nearly immediately. And in the old days, that was done by clickers, or probably in the old days, that's done by paper, obviously. And now the clickers are much faster, and now you can move to gain that feedback on the mobile devices that you have very quickly. And then you have tests that are maybe given quarterly or semi-annually. The MAP and PASS tests, and which one do you all, you
utilize the MAP.
Yeah, so you all do that here. And one of the reasons districts do that, it gives them a pretty good feel of mid-season or a quarter through the season, is how are we going to do on that, on the playoffs at the end of the season, which is our K-Prep test, and it kind of gives you a head start on that. And so you want that feedback, as quickly as possible. But we usually see, and you guys do a little bit faster here, compressed time, which is good. It gives us a little bit more confidence doing this summative testing. Is the MAP testing, we see people rotate people through maybe in a month. Right. But as we've seen more of a one-to-one, to where it's not necessarily kids are carrying around, but there's one-to-one access for the students, you now can do testing in a more compressed amount of time. And so we've taken a look at the data over the course of the years for the daily tests and for the formative testing, and we think about 400,000 students, are tested like that every year, maybe up to 500,000. So we are getting ready to this year ramp it up from doing about 90,000 students testing on the K-Prep and other summative tests to 400,000. And anybody involved with stuff make sure of scale in a certain amount of time. And once again, all good intentions, and we saw that happen in a primary to where someone had a good idea about trying to get an app, and then it didn't work to scale in a certain amount of time, and people didn't understand how to do it. So it turned out to be a really trying to do a good thing, turned out to be a negative thing. So this one is we've tried our best to make sure we're prepared for that. And there's a technology piece and there's a people piece of that. And I'd like to show the two questions here, and then I'm going to, Eric, talk to you a little bit about this, and Phil, we're going to talk about just from the technology piece. This would be question number 1, if you could bring this one up first. So how comfortable do you feel in your health of this? And Eric, I think when I talk to you, and you don't have to be 100% perfect, you feel fairly comfortable,
I feel real comfortable.
as you can, that's your Wi-Fi for the students that are taking it. And this was a question that Phil added last night. If you can go to question number 2, which I thought was a good one, is we're trying to get a feel for what percentage of your students do you think will be taking it to wireless? And I think when you said your discussion is,
It's a large percentage.
yeah. So if you, I think we give when the question coming up, how would you have answered this one?
At least 90%.
Yeah. So you're going to be
or higher.
you're close to 100%.
Yeah, it's
So this was really insightful for us to show the importance of the health of your Wi-Fi. So we know all the students, all the schools are connected. Once again, Kentucky first state to do that. According to our infographic, I think 97% of the schools say we have dense wireless, dense Wi-Fi that's in place. The other one is it set up and configured right to handle this kind of scale in a short period of time? So you all were telling me your map testing is you do it.
We've embraced more of the wholesale approach to where most of our schools tend to utilize all the devices in their building to try to get it completed in a 2 to 3 day period instead of, going for a month-long window. We feel like the data is better for us in that way, and we get it quicker, and it's just instantaneous.
Well, it goes back to the assessment and the need to get that turnaround. The quicker that we can get the information back from the students, the quicker that we can then modify or provide interventions into the curriculum and into the classroom.
And we haven't had any issues since we've been doing that in the last couple, 2 or 3 years.
So we have a couple of apprehensions, and obviously, having done this for 25 years, you try not to be too jaded, and you get, when everybody says perfect storm, perfect storm happens every, 100 years? And so you want to make sure that, when people say perfect storm, and people know by dealing with me is, don't come up with perfect storm, because you can't have a perfect storm every year, is are we really adequately preparing people for this, of the plus and minus of it? So, once again, last year Kentucky was one of the most, if not the most successful, one of the most successful doing online testing. The states touching Kentucky did not have such a good year, and I don't want to revel in someone else's misery, but it shows some things not to do and how well prepared we were, and some of that's because of the way we do things in Kentucky K-12 education technology, the standardization that we have, that's much better than really the other 49 states, but also our testing partner. But also we're at the point now, can it handle this scale? So that was a good feel for us to get, is it's going to be mainly wireless. And is your health ready for that? And giving people a heads up if it's not healthy, because there may be alternative ways that you have to take that test if it's not. The other thing, Phil, that we've been talking about over the past couple of days is the internet pipe going out. Right now it's 80 gig, is that right?
It's currently at 80.
It's 80.
We're currently using on the average, about 50.
Right.
We're peaking somewhere around 55 or 56 during the day. So
we've been working with the KH3 that provides internet services and saying, and we've talked about this for a while, going from 80 to 200. And once again, to give you a feel for this, one of the biggest in the nation. So this is not happening in every state, definitely not at K-12. It's one of the biggest pipes in the country. And working with our partners are saying, we don't anticipate an issue. But the apprehension that we have is during the middle of online testing is trying to do this. And so we're watching for you guys. Part of it is, will really the 80 gig be enough? Will we have a perfect storm to where it is, they're taking a test, but they're doing these other things? Can it really hold the line? Do we need to go to 200 just in case? But there's this broken glass that can occur in doing it. Even though you have well-meaning folks saying, we've looked at it, but they may have looked at it from this sliver, not from holistic, which would be my complaint of folks whenever they look at stuff. Have they considered every aspect, how this could impact this and this, to avoid a perfect storm? Phil, I know you've done some analysis of this.
So we think, and again, we've never done this before, so we got 400,000 students testing in a 2-week window for the K-Prep, and that's new. So for those kind of numbers and that kind of scale is new. So, we've taken a really good look at it. We think that that students, as they're testing, are using about 40 kilobits per second per student. So if you do the math, it looks like we've got headroom, but you never know. So we're going to take some other precautions. We're going to make sure the network's in really good shape. We're going to make sure the network's clean. And we also want to give school districts some advice, as we have in past years, on how to use guaranteed categories, like in Lightspeed, for instance, to be able to, you know, if people are starting to update their iPhones, for instance, you know, it kind of squelches that back. It doesn't kill it, but it squelches it back to where online testing would take a precedence in that case. So have you all used that before?
We have, yeah.
So Eric, what would be your words of wisdom to us? Should we, and we're really asking the whole audience.
Yeah.
There's a lot, because then I have to have this discussion with my peer Rhonda Sims, and obviously I'll have it with, you know, Kevin Brown of our call is for this. We feel pretty comfortable it's going to make this, but our concern is broken glass of well-intending people say we think it's going to be really fine. Just the history of everything technology that's quite a risk, we think.
I've learned to be a little more conservative when it comes to technology because, you know, the old saying, the Murphy's Law situation,
Right.
it's going to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, it just seems like it never fails.
Yeah, yeah.
So I understand, you know, if you feel, I would go with your gut feeling. If you feel like you have it, I wouldn't do it.
Yeah,
That's my opinion because
That's good advice.
the unknown is, it's going to show up.
The thing that we bounce against is if they say that there's something that everyone just look at the testing, but it really causes it to go above 80 with the other stuff they're doing. They say, well, you guys could have done it.
Right.
And you sat on it. So it's one of those no-win. But it is a win if the 80 holds.
Yeah, and I would rather push out, do the throttling of the other stuff.
Right, and the way we're doing the numbers is we're saying if 400,000 students were testing all at one time, and they're not going to be. So, but we were not doing worst-case scenario, and we still had some bandwidth, you know.
Well, thanks for that feedback. I wanted to very quickly, and this is super quick, what are the projects that are due this coming June, just to make sure, once again, that folks are aware of those. And I know Chuck may have some, and Phil, you don't have to go into detail because our field staff will do that in the regional meeting, but what are the things that we want to make sure that they're aware of?
Well, Chuck gave me a list of things that Kate's engineers are going to go over with the districts. That if they haven't done it, they're going to be doing it this month. But there's 25 or 30 kind of big issues, but I just want to cover on a few. We got district bandwidth upgrades that we're doing that we are going to pause during these windows, these really high-stress windows of testing. So we also have KINRAC switch upgrades that we're going to pause during that time. We're going to kind of take a break. We have UPS replacement starting we'll start those right after testing is over, actually. And then we have minimum password standards. That's a security thing. Bob is in our Frankfort studio. He may want to talk about that a little bit. Infinite Campus, the SAML integration to that to get to one login for that.
And those last two are targeted at June 30th.
June 30th.
As our target completion.
So that's way after, I'm kind of revolving everything around the testing windows, which really starts next Monday and goes through first week of June, to be honest with you. But there's a 3-week break that we will want to try to cram some of this stuff in, I think in April. So if we get a chance to do maybe the bandwidth upgrade to 200, we might actually pull that off in April. So, but there's a lot of things, and I know we've got some. The KEs are going to be talking about technical projects, contracts. Mike mentioned some of those. You talked about E-rate already and offers, and security. There's quite a few security items on there, and then some instructional items. So it's a big list. A lot going on in this spring, and before June, and we got online testing. It's a big deal too. So,
and I think a lot of those, if you take a look at our goals that I put out in the summary, are in those goals.
Yep.
To have done, and those have been in motion for quite some time. Want to give you all a heads up. The department is sometimes approached directly versus anyone in the district being aware we've been approached, which we always say, do chain of command, go to the district, because 99% of the time when I get those calls, I circle them right back to the district, because to be honest with you, 99% of the time, the district is the one that can deal with them. We can't solve their problem. You all can solve it and address it. But I do like to give all of you a heads up when that happens. I don't name the specific district that happened to, but I suspect that's happening in other places. And so that's one of, this is the section that we'll do whenever we felt the district has been circumvented or the chain of command has been circumvented, that they're probably not aware that's happening until it happens, but there's probably other people that it's happening to. So the first one is there's a region of chief financial officers that wants our staff to come brief them on the basics of KETS and the KETS funding and the KETS program and the KETS contracts, which is surprising to me because I would expect them to get that information from their own staff. So, the question would be, why is that not occurring? Is that 99% happening? Is that 50%? Is that 10%? And I don't want to, be harsh on the CFOs that wanted to meet with us, but that would be like my equivalent in Washington, D.C., being asked to meet with our chief financial officer, Robin Kinney, and getting briefed on technology. So I don't know why that would happen or why they wouldn't turn to the technology folks they have. And these are really basic questions. I was surprised also, these are what I call 1990s questions. They're the questions we got when we started the program in the 1990s. So I don't know if it is, and my questions around, how good is the relationship do you think you have with the CFO? Do they feel comfortable interacting with you? And why would this, why would this particular type of thing happen that we see there? So I think that's question 3. Yep. If you can bring question 3 up.
That's good.
Yep. So I hope it's the exception. What we're going to do, and what Mike's putting together, is some basics for you so you can educate your CFO. And I encourage you to sit down and talk to them, because these were kind of, actually these were alarming questions that they didn't know the basics of. And it was a group of them. And so I don't know if this just happened in that one area or this is statewide, but we think it's important. I meet monthly with our CFO. It's not a thou shalt have to do that. I meet with most of my horizontal peers once a month, just to make sure we stay in sync, because that's where you really have to read. It's not the folks you report to or the folks you lead. The horizontal relationships are crucial. And so I really hope that with your CFO, you do something to regularly keep them updated, but also they feel comfortable enough to come and ask you these questions. And so I would have expected those questions to be asked of a brand new person, person in the EdTech leadership that maybe came from another state. They had no idea what was going on. Because most of the folks that filled the CIO role were former in some position in the district, so they got somewhat of a feel for it. And for them to not to be totally in that was a bit alarming. And I won't go through all the questions, but I'm going to share it with our field staff to make sure they understand the basics of that to get on the radar screen. Other one we got was a question about behavioral data. Once again, the attentions were good. The question was from an organization outside of K-12, is when a student goes from one district to the next, does their behavioral data go with them? The answer is yes. It comes in a different form, though. It's not necessarily automatically imported and populated in Infinite Campus, because every district does behavior just a little bit different. Coding's a little bit different. Numerical scheme's a little bit different. So one district will have it different, so you can't automatically import it within there, but the file comes with them, whether it be in PDF form or paper form, which is an important thing for people to know. So I think the concern was, if you had a major issue in one district and they went to another one, does the district they're coming to get somewhat of a heads up on it? And the answer appears to be yes, and that's been in paper form for a long time. I asked my mom, who was a school counselor in the 1990s, and she says, this is the way we handle the 1990s. And pretty similar. We've added electronic part to it, but it's not changed there. So wanted to make sure that our district folks were aware of that one. Seems like there was another one around the transfer of information. Oh yes, there was a question that said, is there anything in the law that prevents a district from going to voice over IP in their school? Do you guys use voice over IP here for your phone system? And I said, I certainly hope so. There's not a law, because we got 75% of them already over to it, and it's just a matter of time the other 25% as the age systems move out. But that was someone asking that, and I'm sure they were around it. Is it reliable enough? Is it whatever enough for us to have have that in place. Is there any law that restricts that? And the answer is no. I think most of you heard involved with esports. We're aware of, it came out in the news that Fortnite is not one of the acceptable games. And the High School Athletics Association took a stand against that, and there were some organizations outside of Kentucky that took issue with that. But just want to make sure you're aware that's a radar screen. Those that you have, do you have esports here? So I think there is, as I can recall, like 30, 35 districts that have esports, and it's either the League of Legends, it's not Smite yet, or the Rocket League. But this was one to where it actually has, you know, assault weapons in it. And so that was the pushback from the High School Athletics Association. I want to make sure you're aware of it. There's another one we're taking a look at with something called indemnity clause, which I'm not familiar with. If you're a lawyer, you're familiar with that one. But there's one district that was brought to our attention. They had, their legal staff was having their district stopping using a lot of the free software that was out there because it didn't meet the indemnity clause. And we're not aware of that happening in other districts or any other states. So let us know if that's happening. And we are trying to work that from our side to make sure, because this is like stuff like National Geographic. I mean, it's free. And indemnity is like...
It's a hold harmless clause.
Yeah, hold harmless clause. And to be honest with you, you lose free stuff, you're probably taking a risk anyway in using it. So we're trying to find out that, so I wanted to make sure folks are aware. But if you are running into that as well, please make me aware of it. I think those are the topics. I did want to see the answers to question 5 and 6 for Bob. These were multi-factor authentication. Bob knows we're doing disk encryption with all the hard drives and the agency. We're moving to the longer passphrase. We're encouraging encryption. I'm using the encryption that comes out with our email system. But also we're trying to get feedback on what percentage of our staff in the agency do we move to multi-factor authentication. And this is for you all as well. Bob knows we're having this discussion. Is it mainly the folks that deal with the money and the leadership positions? And we figure in the agency it's about half of the positions that we have. So if we're doing half, should we just not do everybody? And what are the unintended consequences of that happening? So Bob knows I've given him the task. What does it mean if someone's on their smartphone and they're trying to access their email? Do they got to log into VPN or do multi-factor authentication every time they do it just for that? So what is the hassle factor associated with that? So I don't know if Bob would have any comments associated with that one. But you see, it's not, but we moved to it. So I don't know, if you guys consider that here?
We have, and certain people right now are in the positions you're talking about.
Yeah.
But we've talked about it all staff, but haven't gotten to that.
Right.
And David, there's actually...
Bring up question 6 if you could.
Yeah, while you're bringing that up, there was a social question that was asked, and this is pretty awesome. There's now 15 responses from folks that have joined into that discussion that really has to do with how people are logging in and multi-factor authentication and the big idea about making sure that there is secure information, that we don't lose that data security and data privacy.
I see also popping up as we have a happy birthday.
We do. Rory Fundora.
Trick County, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Rory.
Okay. Thanks. And this is question 6. And so how do you feel about that one, Eric?
I honestly would love to go to the whole district, but I don't know that that's going to happen.
And how it plays out. I mean, that's the thing that we're balancing.
And we've eliminated, you don't really have that problem in district, right? Because you can set it up to where if it sees the network, it's not going to do that, which makes sense. It's only outside that, which is what you're trying to resolve anyway. And I think for a lot of people, it's more of the unknown, thinking, oh gosh, what if I can't get to my email kind of thing. And not to say that it couldn't happen, because I even experienced it myself. I didn't have access to cellular at the point, and I'm sitting there trying to get my email. I'm like, okay, I can't do it. I can't even authenticate at this point. So, but I realized that it was frustrating, so I can see that.
Any other final comments by our district, host district?
Appreciate you all coming and spending some time with us this morning and giving us the opportunity to highlight Spencer County and what we do well. And like I said, I'm glad to have Mr. Abel and Mr. Cecil here flanking me, because I could only answer a handful of the questions that you posed today. So,
and thanks to you all out there for joining us, and we'll see you next month. Take care.